Chris. How are you?
We're doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. There was a hearing. I guess we'll just get right into it. So there was that hearing yesterday, Bree, the silencer hearing. We were both watching it. Very interesting. I kind of keyed in on what some of the things that you had talked about in the hearing because the like the pro silencer lobby that they had out. I mean, they even had the guy from like the Silencer Association. Um, they were talking about how there are basically no crimes committed with silencers or something crazy like that. But then you had talked about the types of crime we're seeing, which is rampant. I mean, too much crime. And I don't know if you were trying to say that leave it to our criminals here on Guam. Like, okay, if they're not using silencers to commit crimes everywhere else, then they will use them here because we got a special breed of criminal here on Guam. And so you did kind of give these comments about just talking about the crime in general, Senator Brown.
Well, some of the comments that were made were kind of the view that perhaps we were biased, or assumption that members of the legislature were biased, probably because we watch too many Hollywood movies
What
and
was that?
James Bond movies, and I guess we see the silencer, we don't hear any sound, and and I just simply commented with regards to what I see and what I know a lot of our people are experiencing out there. There's just as you mentioned, I mean, look at the incident over the Easter weekend with the murder of the former mayor of Humatic. I mean, and some very gruesome crimes that we've seen happen on island and in the last few months and continue to happen. I mean, our people feel a sense of apprehension, living in their own homes and feeling safe. I mean, I've heard from elderly people that feel safe in their own homes when strangers come into their house or to their garage, and take things that is not there, where there's no basic respect of, ownership and responsibility on Guam. So, I just think we're in the real world in dealing with these issues. And certainly, as I look at this issue with regards to silencers, I mean, you have a lot of good law-abiding citizens, and they're going to do the right and proper thing. And I certainly understand their objective of why they would like to have this legalized, so that they can safely be able to do their practice and exercise with their weapons. And we need to separate that, of course, from the criminal activities that are out there. There's like I said, there's a lot of good law-abiding citizens, and we need to weigh that. We need to look at that objective versus all the other crimes that are happening on Guam, and criminals that unfortunately they're going to continue to do what they do with or without this legislation. So I'm certainly listening to all sides of the issue. What's the good part of it, and maybe the not so good. But you're going to have criminals out there that are going to do their crimes regardless of what is legal or what's obviously illegal. They're not paying any attention to what those rules are within our society, and we're just seeing an abuse of that, a continued abuse of that in our community.
And Sabrina, you have the bill up actually. That's all.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you could kind of go through. So anybody can, if this becomes law, anybody can get a silencer as long as
Well,
you're
I'm sure they're going to have to go through a background check, as
right.
you would, getting a gun license and making sure that they're responsible individuals and that they meet those requirements and protocols. And then, of course, I'm sure the additional cost of what's involved in purchasing a silencer.
You know what I thought was interesting to me, and just because again, I said this a couple weeks. I'm not a gun person, but I didn't really appreciate that this whole like narrative that everyone's brainwashed by the far left liberal Hollywood elite message on what the silencers do or what suppressors do, or if you think that it totally quiets the gun, then you're stupid because you're just watching movies and that's not what it's about. I just didn't, I don't like it when people kind of like make assumptions about other people's intelligence in a forum like
Sure.
that. Because I just feel like if it's called a silencer for a reason and a suppressor for a reason, and logically, I wish they had been able to better explain, because I think the Speaker Terlahi had brought up something about hearing gunshots in the village, right? And being able to determine where they're, because when we read a lot of crime stories that there's a shooting, a lot of times that's how it starts is, somebody heard the shots and they called the cops or whatever. But
Well, and as I mentioned during the hearing, I said if they could give us an example. I mean, I'm not as familiar with weapons either. I think the most I held a rifle was when I was taking a tour of our National Guard training, and they actually had us go through their exercises, on screen with how they respond to responding with fire. And I actually got 100%, which impressed me. I said, "Wow, if I had been younger and do this again, I could join the Guard because I was pretty good."
Wow. Yeah, and
I made my target, and I didn't shoot the wrong person, so I thought that's great.
I grew up a little bit in Virginia,
but,
and so,
but I wish they had, if they, and there's still time between now and whenever this bill, actually is reported out and gets on the floor. I mean, I certainly would like to see and hear what's the difference. What does a regular gunshot sound like, and what does it sound like with a suppressor on it, and what impact does that have? Because somebody can talk about it, but actually hearing it is a different story. I would like to hear the differences.
You go on
myself.
YouTube, Senator. You just go YouTube like silencer, real whatever sound, and then. But
if
anyway,
I do that and the FBI is investigating me, I'm just going to say I'm doing research for a bill, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's never something I have to tell you, Chris. I've ever thought of looking up, but
I did it this morning because I wanted to know. Right. No, but what kind of got me, Senator, was the logic that they presented, where the bill is called the Hearing Protection Act. And they had all this testimony from, there was even a retired police officer who said that, when we're at the range, it's to protect our hearing. But then when Speaker Terlahi said, how are we going to hear the gunshots in the village? They said, it doesn't even quiet it. So I didn't know, what's true. Does it protect your hearing or does it not? I just didn't, to me, logically, those two facts didn't really make sense. But maybe I'm watching too many movies.
I think there's time to get more information and more feedback, and I'll do that up. I'll look it up. So if they ever investigate me, I'm going to tell them that you recommended I look it up.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not normally looking up about guns and suppressors, so okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, there was just a bunch of things on YouTube where, So
was it mentioned in the hearing where this bill? What was the impetus behind introducing this, and why this is so
well,
important?
I know Senator Tony Atta gave his introduction to the bill with regards to why he introduced it, and I'm assuming it's from the advocacy of a number probably of the people that provided testimony that are supportive of it, and understandable. I mean, the people that testified yesterday are all responsible for those from Guam, or I know some of them personally. They're responsible individuals in our community, and they're bringing this issue forward. Mm-hmm. So that's that's where it is.
Anybody testify against it?
Not for the time that I was in the hearing. I didn't hear anyone testify against the bill.
Yeah,
and then there's still time. I mean, certainly they can, if anyone else has testimony, they can certainly provide it to the, Senator Pito Terlahi's office. If they have any additional input, they certainly can submit that to his committee.
I think it was clear, though, from watching the hearing that, it's very fortunate that you got that many people out to testify at a public hearing at 2 p.m. on a weekday. And just judging from who was testifying, I don't know how partial or impartial the testimony was, because you're hearing from people who, sell silencers. You're hearing from people who are going to benefit from this. But we didn't really hear any kind of unbiased look at the data. And my takeaway was from the hearing was, okay, whose party is selling silencers? Because that's what it kind of, when there was one guy who started talking about how much silencers cost and the fees that would be generated. And he made it sound like a lot, but when the speaker had pressed him on it, he basically had no numbers or anything. But I did reach out to Chief of Police Steve Ignacio yesterday to ask him, are they providing any testimony on the bill? And he said he would be providing written testimony in favor of it, because he had, I guess, a previous meeting at 2 or the same time as the public hearing.
Well, I wish he had been able to provide that testimony, certainly, so we could ask them. But there's still time, provide input so that we can look at all the information and deliberate on it. It's an interesting issue. It's one you don't normally expect to hear from, but it's on the table, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Okay, maybe we'll put up a Twitter poll and see what people think, Jace, at some point.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Definitely the lobby is pretty strong on this. So. Senator Brown, I wanted to kind of, because it's Earth Month, right? And I wanted to kind of twist, before we get into your transparency bill, just as a former head of Guam EPA, what are your thoughts when you look around at the environment on Guam with not just what's happening with the buildup and the aquifer, but on the illegal dumping and just kind of round robin the state of the environment today versus the state of it when you were running Guam EPA?
Well, a lot of good things are happening. I mean, the positive side is there's a lot more awareness and consciousness, particularly among our young people in our community about our environment. That wasn't always the case. I mean, when I was advocating for this, it was 30 years ago that I actually was appointed as deputy administrator of Guam EPA. We didn't have as many people that were as conscientious as we have now. And I think that's wonderful because we're going to need that kind of leadership and support heading into the future because our resources are more stressed now more than ever. In our marine resources out there, what's happening on land, particularly with regards to our northern Guam drinking water lens. I mean, we have the population we have and the quality of life we have on Guam and our ability to sustain the amount of tourists when they certainly come back. Over 1 million tourists a year because of our water resources that we have on our island. Not every island to the north of us with Saipan and the limitations that they have because they're not as fortunate as we are. But if we don't manage it, if we don't take care of it, if we don't replenish it, we're going to end up with major water problems and water quality problems in the future. And while I know that we put a lot of concern and focus, certainly with regards to the military buildup and military activities that have happened on our island, we have a lot of issues happening outside the base that we need to be concerned with. I mean, the illegal dumping, the sewage that is, is not properly processed, particularly up in northern Guam where our aquifer is. We need to be very, very concerned about that. And there's not an awful lot of work being done to actually go out and address those type of violations. I mean, Guam EPA, I know we had a hearing not too long ago and in asking them how many personnel they have. They pretty much have the same amount of personnel we had 30 years ago in the agency. And yet, our growth and our responsibilities here have significantly increased, but the regulatory side of it to ensure that, people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, companies are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We've not increased that capability in our government to address those concerns. And, a number of years ago, I worked to support and fund the hydrogeologic survey at Weary so that they could profile our northern Guam water lens and also educate new up and coming and a number of water resource hydrogeologists have come from that program, not just supporting here on Guam, but throughout the region and other parts of the world, because we need that capability and that expertise, and having some homegrown capability is something that I've always valued. So, my previous legislative life, the passage of that legislation and the program that's been implemented since then with Weary, and then also, being the supporter, of course, because a lot of work went from aquatic and wildlife into the creation of the marine preserves. I was a major advocate for that and pushed that through the Guam legislature, and a Republican majority at that, believe it or not, to get the marine preserves in place. And those are things that I reflect back on that, are things for the future. We just have to manage it. We've been fortunate to inherit what we have on this island, but it's our responsibility to take care of it. And for those that don't, that for those citizens out there that are not as conscientious, then we need to hold them accountable.
But why do you think we continue to see this? Do you believe it's because they can't afford tipping fees? Because we always hear that. Well, they can't afford to get their trash taken to the landfill.
It's hard to say. I mean, I'm sure there's a certain percentage of our community that probably doesn't have the financial resources. I mean, we do have a number of people that are on social welfare, but we also have a number of people that have the resources but choose to spend it elsewhere. It comes down to personal responsibility. And while we have expectations, the government is supposed to take care of us, clothe us, and, sing us lullabies. I mean, we have a personal responsibility in this community to take care of our island and our resources. I don't understand it. One time I went to a public high school to talk to students, and I was taken aback at the time with the amount of trash that I saw walking into the school as a visitor. This is a high school. And I actually picked up a couple cans that were in the hallway and walked into the class. And when I was introduced, the first thing I did was throw it on the floor. And I'm sure the students were very surprised. And I said, "You're probably very surprised that I threw those aluminum cans on the floor." They said, "Yeah, ma'am, why did you do that?" I said, "Because isn't that what you do? Isn't that what you did outside your classroom? Maybe not you personally, but other classmates did." And for me, I was taken aback. I was like, how do we have such little respect? Or that's what the custodians do. That's what one of the students said. And I said, "Oh, so their job is to clean up after you. You don't respect your campus and your island, but you're expecting somebody else to come and clean it up for you." And I'm very much for personal responsibility. And I think we need to continue to educate our young people. A lot of them are much brighter than us these days on these issues. Yeah. But there's others that I think we need to help along, and we need to hold people responsible. I mean, this whole idea that, we have no personal responsibility. And, I'm the victim of everything. I mean, maybe in some cases that apply. In most cases, I don't think it does, particularly with regards to littering. And I've spent many a day, collecting other people's trash that they've thrown and had no respect for their own community, their own home. And I think we just need to also do enforcement. My view, especially at Guam EPA, because we weren't one of the large agencies, but we were dealing with major projects. We Menengan Hills, we had golf courses, we had a lot of the hotels like the Hyatt that were in construction. And yet, we magnify our presence. If you knew that we were going to enforce and there was no doubt we were going to do it, most people comply when they know there are consequences to it. But you don't assert that. You're not out there enforcing, then you get what you get. And a lot of people, if there's no, enforcement, why are they going to do anything about it? Somebody else is going to come and clean my mess up. And I really think we need to change that view and hold people responsible.
Right.
How about that transparency bill?
Yes, I introduced the transparency bill, and I actually, again, in my previous legislative life, Chris, I'm the senator that also did the bill that requires the 5-day public notice and the 2-day public notice before public hearings, because I was seeing meetings that were happening on the spot with immediate announcements without giving the community adequate notice, so that things can. It's really happening supposedly above the table, but we know the agenda was under the table, right? And so I very much feel, especially now, I think it's become evident. And one of the positive things, to think there's anything positive about this pandemic, but one of the positive things that have come out of it is our ability to communicate in spite of it. And thank goodness we have this technology available at this time, because imagine if we did not, But it's shown that we have the ability to communicate. We've been holding virtual public hearings in the Guam legislature. So there's no reason that when we have a board or commission in this government now that are meeting, that they cannot have that being aired or through the social process here of Zoom and other things to ensure that the public, if they're not able to physically attend the meeting, they can simply get online and they know a hearing is happening for a certain department or agency that they have an interest in. They can get on and see what's happening and know what's going on with their government. The other thing too that this adds is it's the department or agency now is required to actually provide an agenda to meet those public notice requirements. It's not simply good enough. If you look in the paper, sometimes I just put, the Civil Service Commission is having a meeting on Thursday. Well, that's nice, but I have no clue what the civil service is meeting about, or a department or agency. Maybe they're moving a major contract, for all I know. I have no idea, but now they're going to be required to publish that ahead of time. So the community, and certainly those of you in the media, you can look at it. You know what's on the agenda, as well as the board members that are meeting, or commission members that are meeting. And then we know what's going on. And if we're interested and want to listen in or attend that hearing, then by all means, we have the information to do so. And I just think that if we want transparency and accountability, I know we use those words so frequently these days, but this actually shows, proves, and delivers that level of transparency. So we don't have meetings happening like, they used to behind closed doors, so to speak, or because nobody's paying attention, or shucks, the reporter never made it down to that hearing at, 4:30 in the afternoon. But then it's there for all to see, and it's recorded so that that information is readily available. Because I very much feel, that the solution to a lot of the issues where things are perhaps not going down the straight line as they should be with regards to government and government resources, it's very hard to hide all that stuff when you have to operate in the light of day. I'm not always going to be in office doing what I do. You may not always be doing what you're doing in media. I certainly hope you continue to do, because I enjoy listening to you and the issues that you guys bring up. But I think that the more awareness our public has and the knowledge that they have, that's the power they ultimately have. It's their government. And it's not, we shouldn't be running for office because we want to use and abuse public resources. I mean, our job is to ensure that, we're caretakers for a time and that we're acting responsibly. And I think the more awareness and the more light that's shed on these issues, it's very hard to hide things when things are out in the light of day.
I wanted to ask before we let you go, because we have Senator Moylan right behind you. Last week we interviewed the chairman of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, Chairman Juan Reyes Jr., and this is relative to a letter you had written to the governor asking the governor to conduct an investigation into some of these allegations from land agents that the director of the trust, the administrative director, Jack Hattig, was altering and coercing land agents' reports. And so basically, we had the chair on. It was about, I want to say, about 30 plus minutes interview. Low, there was very little that was actually said in that. Did you catch the interview? And then what's the status on your
I
request?
did catch her at the interview.
Okay. So just your thoughts and follow up. We're just trying to follow up on that letter that you had written about this issue.
Well, I did hear the governor's response to it, and my thought on that whole process is, I think Governor Liu needs to ring the bell. Maybe she doesn't know what the right hand is doing and what the left hand is doing in her administration, and I hope she doesn't. If she does, then that certainly is a reason to be very concerned. I did hear also the news interview that happened with regards to this issue. The day the land agent raised these concerns, and I don't know yet. Is this just an isolated incident? Is this just involving one single report? Is there more reports? I mean, I did FOIA that information latter part of last week, so certainly look forward to getting that information from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. To find out, is this the only time that it happened, or has it happened in other occasions? Even the chairman I heard saying, "Oh, this is a personnel matter." We're dealing with an individual that's been appointed who's an unclassified employee in this government. I'm not all for this shielding, this whole secrecy that shrouds these issues. There's no reason for that, especially when the accusations are really not personnel related. To me, they sound pretty much policy related. And when you're taking a report, I mean, it's one thing, I'm dotting the T's and crossing the I's. I'm just editing it. Maybe you can argue that. But when you're changing the substantive issues and then not acknowledging that, or I'm not aware that the commission was informed that he had altered these changes, or had the land agent not even raised this concern, would anything have even been said, of the commission? Because when you look at the document at the bottom, it has the initials of the land agent, and it says it's the land agent's report. So if you're just looking at the document, I'm looking at it and I'm assuming this is the product of the work product of the land agent and the write-up that the land agent created. But when you're looking at their version and the version that was presented to the commission, there are some significant changes that, in terms of what's allowed by the law and what isn't, that was changed. So, to call that a personnel issue and, let it go at that. I mean, I think there's so much more. And the history, as you know, of the Chamorro Land Trust has been so clouded with use and abuse. Yeah. Actually, when I worked at the University of Guam for 4 years, the latter part of the work that I had up there, we actually had an agreement between the university that was directed under Dr. Robert Barber there and the Chamorro Land Trust at their request to assist them in reviewing the agricultural leases for Chamorro Land Trust, and actually doing and working alongside them to do inspections of Chamorro Land Trust properties for agricultural purposes, because we wanted to be able to work with them, see also how we can implement a lot of the federal programs that are available to farmers on island and have them take advantage of that. And, I've had a chance to actually sit and look at these lease agreements and the issues of compliance or lack thereof. So I have a little more familiarity with those issues than I would just simply as a member of the Guam legislature. And we know there's a clouded history in the land trust. And, the governor said she wanted to ensure that the land trust is moving forward in a good way. She's made public statements to that effect when she separated it from Department of Land Management. Yeah. I mean, I believe her that is her agenda. But, in order to ensure that, that actually has to be implemented in practice. And if you're seeing your director is not doing things properly, then either correct it or replace that individual. I mean, take appropriate action to ensure that the public has confidence that, things are happening above board. And when things like this happen, of course, it raises a question mark in your mind about, gee, what's really going on here and who's really being accommodated. So I really think it's something the governor needs to know. I mean, I'm hoping that she's just unaware. But if she's not, then I'm concerned. I think the public needs to be concerned, because these are assets that belong to our people, and we need to ensure that they're being properly administered. And if there are issues of corruption in the past, then by all means, let's move forward and clean it up so that the program can move forward as intended and help our people out there.
Yes or
I mean,
no?
as recently as yesterday, Chris, I've had people coming in. I just wanted to play this, coming into my office because they're unable to get answers from the Chamorro Land Trust Commission about their lots or changes in their lots. And, there really shouldn't be the case for that as legislators. I mean, they should be able to go directly to the commission, and whatever the official response is, they should be able to get an answer to these questions rather than, as they're coming to me saying, we're getting the runaround. Gosh, the agent we talked to a few years ago has since passed away. Who do we talk to? And that's really not how this program should be administered, and ensuring that, things are happening above board and happening as intended and as it should be under law.
So did you ever get a response to your letter? from the governor?
No, the governor has not responded to me officially. No.
Aye, day.
What about any additional complaints that you've received that you forwarded to oversight chairs?
I did receive one. I actually received one complaint from a couple of different people, anonymous, of course, concerning an employee at Department of Public Works that they believe is an unclassified employee who they believe has been earning excessive overtime that they don't think that individual should be earning or could justify. So I did send that that information to the oversight chair, Senator Talina Nelson, who has oversight over Public Works, to relay that. And again, you know, as the oversight chair, I'm hopeful that she's going to review the issue because, you know, it's a concern, obviously. It's the first complaint I've gotten from two different people on the same issue and on the same individual that they felt was, you know, not deserving of this overtime or maybe padding their overtime. You know, having to do with bus service that's provided from DPW from the airport and bringing down passengers that were going to the quarantine facility, and you know, issues that perhaps, you know, this individual may be even copying their hours to justify their hours. So we'll see what happens with that. But you know, our public is out there. These other employees, I'm sure, and people that are aware of these issues are bringing them forth, you know, to get that information out there, and hopefully there's any legitimacy to it that it gets corrected.
Just last question: do you think there should be an oversight of this whole land trust issue, in which the governor said that she didn't believe that Hattig knowingly went against the land trust rules and regs? I think that was her quote. But has it reached that point, Senator, where you think that we need to get eyes on this in a formal hearing?
Well, you know, I'm only a member, believe it or not, of one committee in this entire legislature. I attend a number of hearings, but I'm only a member of one committee, and that's Speaker Therese Terlahi's committee. She gave me membership, and I certainly believe there should be an oversight hearing. The only way you're going to make these issues not be an issue is that, you know, it sees the light of day and that these questions are asked and answered, and are the answers satisfactory? I think there's an area of concern. Otherwise, I wouldn't raise it. You know, especially listening to the comments of that land agent publicly, these statements that were made publicly are concerning to me as a member of the legislature and a member of the committee. And because they exist and they're out there, I think it's very difficult to just say, oh, it's a personnel matter, we're not going to discuss it publicly. I think more the reason, because of the history of the Chamorro Land Trust and the desire to ensure that this program is properly implemented and that these issues are cleaned up, by all means, we should have an oversight hearing so that these questions can be cleared up. And if there are concerns and issues and you know, the director has done things improperly, then by all means that needs to come to light, and we need to move forward with a clean slate. If it requires correction or administrative action or replacement, then by all means. I mean, it's not about us at the end of the day. I mean, if we can't perform our jobs properly, I'm sure the people of Guam would expect us in elected capacities to be removed. We certainly should expect that of department directors if they're not properly performing their jobs, or they're doing things improperly, or they're actually forging official documents and misrepresenting
them. Hey, he didn't know
them.
the definition of forgery, Senator.
I have it. You know, you want to? I
know. I told him that. I said, "Hey, it's in the letter."
I have my letter right here. Yeah. You know, I mean, I know. I'm gonna, you know, put the definition of forgery.
We got you. I think we can. Yeah, it's a first page Google, Senator.
I'm ready this time.
I know.
Okay?
I know.
I got the letter here. I have it within hand's reach, just in case you asked me. I was prepared.
Thank you, Senator. You bring up good points, and I think what I just want to close with is that this land agent, Lydia, is not. She's by no means someone to take advantage of, and she was very calculated in speaking before the board and making these comments publicly known. And I think when you have a classified employee go out on a limb like that, you guys are obligated to, if not back them up, at least use whatever mechanisms you can use legislatively to really go into this. Because when I piece together the governor's comments, which is basically like Jack's my boy, the chairman's comments, which were just, we didn't get nothing out of that. You can kind of see that I think that they're going to reach a ceiling on this at the department level, at the administration level. It's clear the governor's got Jack's back, and that's where you guys come in as that co-equal branch of government. Because, I mean, you have employees who are risking it by publicly blowing that whistle. And so That's my thoughts. Thank you, Senator. We got to run because
Well,
we got.
and I agree. And I just think at the end, how we should look at this, it's not having anybody's back, it's having the people's back and being responsible and accountable to that. And most definitely, that's why I've raised the issue. You know, that's why I've written these letters, and that's why I'm still on top of this issue, because I think it is a concern. It's a very legitimate concern that we need answers to.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Senator.
Okay, thank you. You guys take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Let's get Senator
Bye-bye.
Moylan on right now, as he's also got a bill, and this is interesting because it's something that we definitely talked about on this show. Is we kind of